Oh, there we go. Welcome everybody to this afternoon's Read Ballarat Local Stories. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land where we live, learn and grow, and pay respects to elders past, present and emerging, and to any First Nations people joining us this afternoon. It is my pleasure to introduce Emma Rutherford, Bec and Breeana Wade from the SunLit Project. This has been a project for 2 Catholic primary schools in Northern Victoria since 2019, undertaking the transition from balanced literacy to structured literacy. So the teachers, tutors, learning support officers at St Paul's and St Joseph's have undertaken a great deal of new learning in the past 3 years, and following a tightly planned transition, and now in the first full year of implementing structured literacy, which is very exciting. The project has been inspired by Debbie Hepplewhite, the Writing Revolution, Pam Snow and the Solar Lab at La Trobe, Jennifer Buckingham of Multilit and Amina McLean, and are guided by the ethos of when we know better, we do better, and cut the fluff and teach the stuff. Thank you so much for coming to present at our Read Ballarat group this afternoon. I know there's been a lot of anticipation about hearing from you and lots of people following along on Facebook. So thank you, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'll start by, thank you, Sue, for inviting us to share our story, and to Kathleen and Kate and Shay for bringing everything together for us. And we, of course, add to the acknowledgement, we're joining you from Latchi land, and we pay our respects to the elders and to any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander peoples who are here with us this afternoon. And we'll jump right in and get started, and hopefully our technical glitches that we were having are over. No, they're not. Hang on. Yeah, there we go. So our project, the SunLit Project, is an action research partnership between 2 of our Catholic primary schools in Sunraysia, which is hence the name, and Catholic Education Ballarat. And of course, we implemented this action research in order to improve literacy outcomes by transitioning from balanced to structured literacy instruction across the school. So the constituents of the SunLit Project are our 2 schools, St Joseph's and St Paul's. The 2 schools have a lot in common, and of course some really key differences as well. Both schools have relatively low SES scores and relatively high rates of referral and NCCD count. St Joseph's Redcliffs is only little. We've only got about 100 students there, and we're a bit bigger at St Paul's with around 300 students. Both schools operate composite classrooms at the moment, and as you would all know, that has its advantages and its challenges as well. As for CEB, we've got, like anything, we've got lots of acronyms. So we might say CEB, we might say CEO, we might say DOBSEL, but basically our diocese begins, well, depends on who you talk to where it begins, but it stretches from all the way up here in Mildura at the New South Wales border, all the way down to Warrnambool and Portland. And we've got 64 Catholic primary schools and secondary schools in our diocese, and we're up here in the northern zone. We have our Mildura office, which is where we are this afternoon.
We stretch from the Murray to the sea.
We do, Murray to the sea. So we're the founders of the project, and we're here always representing our brilliant teachers and amazing students. I'll just introduce us a little bit more. So this is Breeana. Breeana began the project as the Deputy Principal of St Joseph's Redcliffs, and she now works for CEB as a Learning and Teaching Ed Officer. She's also, as well as being a structured literacy expert, she is our tech wizard who creates all our data tools and our website and works her magic. Bec she started off as the literacy leader at St Paul's. She's been the literacy leader for a long time, and this year she's taken on that role across both of the project schools, which has worked really well for us. It's been really helpful to have that consistency And Bec really is the linchpin who works very, very closely with the teaching teams at both schools and ensures we've got that consistency of practice. And I'm Emma. I've been a Learning and Teaching Ed Officer at CEB for a few years now, but this year I'm really lucky to be on secondment to St Paul's, teaching in Year 1-2. It's my first year in the classroom for a very long time, and it's been quite the eye-opening experience, and it's been great to actually put my research into practice. So to give you a really condensed history of how we came together, I established a network in 2018 called the River Region Learning and Teaching Alliance, which was a group of learning and teaching leaders up here in the Northern Zone. And Bec and Breeana were both original members of this group too. And our aim was to get all our local Catholic primary schools together and to build some social capital and get to know one another and share our data and examine our challenges and that sort of thing. So through the work of the Alliance, we really uncovered some commonality, and Bec and Breeana very humbly and vulnerably shared their challenges with literacy and some really challenging data, confronting data, and recognised that they had some really common trends. As it turned out, they were both already immersing themselves in the science of reading and the research that has led us here at the same time as I was, and the Alliance gave us that place, I suppose, that meeting place that we leapt from. And so we sort of formed a little offshoot of the Alliance that at the time was called the Phonics Cluster, which I think says a little bit about where our understanding was at the time. And then it became SunLit. So like the overwhelming majority of the schools in our diocese, and many of your schools too, we had long been committed to a balanced literacy approach. And I know I don't need to define balanced literacy for any of you, but I found a version of this graphic just the other day, and it was actually made by a balanced literacy advocate who was making the point that balanced literacy is a lot more like cooking than baking, and there's no set recipe. So lots of, quite wonderful ingredients, but no set recipe in terms of how to apply them and produce success. And the recipe really wasn't working for us, and we were willing to own that. And we identified the same long-term data trend in both of our schools, and in my role I've seen it in many, many other schools as well, and I'm sure it will be familiar to most of you. We had a significant percentage of children and an increasing percentage of children requiring not only literacy but also behavioural intervention and support, particularly from grade 3 onward. We had quite a high percentage of children appearing to be at standard and above in terms of text level achievement at the end of grade 2. But then in early testing in grade 3, those very same children actually struggled to achieve benchmarks and began to decline, which we now understand as the grade 3 or grade 4 slump. They were proficient at using meaning and pictorial cues in their reading, but then their skills started to fall away. And this trend, we were observing it, but it was also supported by all of our formal testing results. And what that looked like for us was really confronting. These little figures here represent the students of the SunLit schools, around 400 of them. And this is what it looks like when we're only seeing success for around half of those students. And facing up to this, which we did with actual photos of the students at both of our schools, was heartbreaking and quite galvanizing. So on behalf of those kids and their really hardworking, brilliant, dedicated teachers who had all been doing their best with what they knew to do, Bec and Bree and I dived into the research. I know you'll all be really familiar with the resources on the screen, so I won't go through them all now. The slides, all of our slides will be made available to you at the end of the presentation if you want to refer back to anything, and these are live links.
The research that Emma's just outlined there is about a 50th of what we actually undertook, wasn't it?
It's a snippet. But what we realised, as I'm sure many of you are realising or realised long before we did, was that our balanced literacy practices were almost universally contradicted by the recommendations of research. So while we were well trained and well practiced in a constructivist approach, science was recommending explicit direct instruction. We'd been for years prioritising meaning, where we could maybe have been prioritising sound, symbol, and so on. I won't run through all of those contrasts there. One of the interesting things that I will pick up on is, for a long time, we'd been reflecting on the fact that we were delivering systematic synthetic phonics instruction at intervention level. So for our tier 2 or tier 3 students, they were, we were using programs like MiniLit for those students, and secretly, sort of quietly wondering to ourselves, why aren't we just giving this to all of them in the first place if it's so effective? So we developed a timeline, a roadmap. We've all got significant experience in change management, and we knew that this was going to take a really long time. So as much as we had a really strong sense of urgency and a need to fix things right now, and we realised that it was a significant shift that was needed. It wasn't just a matter of that idea of putting a phonics lipstick on a balanced literacy pig. It wasn't a matter of that. We needed to make a really substantial shift, and it was going to take a while. So we've given ourselves 5 years, as you can see in this timeline, and we're only in the 3rd year now. We're very happy to be out of that orange phase, which was really tricky, because in that phase we were trying to combine 2 diametrically opposed approaches, and it was necessarily messy and uncomfortable, and it was really important that we reminded ourselves and our teachers that it was temporary. We've now relinquished balanced literacy practices entirely in both of our schools, and we can safely say that we identify structured literacy schools now, which is wonderful. There's still a way to go, but we feel like we're over that first very tricky hurdle. I'll hand over to Bec now, who will lead you through the specific steps that we've taken to get here.
Thanks, Emma, and hello to you all. It's great to be here in front of you. So the first step was to obviously begin with the why, and we engaged with our staff in rigorous discussion and really asked the question of our staff and ourselves, what will we accept for our students? Our data was our biggest ally, and as Emma has already alluded to, it simply could not be argued with. We were respectful, but at the same time we were realistic. We spent time articulating and unpacking why we've always done that and what we've always done. We looked at the history of constructivism, whole language, balanced literacy, old cell, special expertise. So we were really open and honest with all of our staff, and I firmly believe we provided a safe and supportive environment where their values and beliefs were heard. We recognised, though, that we had to choose our hard, and our hard meant that we needed to engage in new learning, and new learning for everyone, and lots of new learning. Step 2 is we developed or implemented a phonics program, and it was during the pandemic. So it was stop, start again, but we kept on going. We had to balance the sustainable change management process with an urgent need to improve our student outcomes. And the implementation of the SSP program was the most effective and achievable way to boost the instruction quickly and measurably. We walk through our classrooms now, and we hear in every grade our teachers confidently explaining and talking about digraphs, trigraphs, diphthongs, phonemes, graphemes, syllable types and rules. And it's simply astonishing. And where I think we've come from to where we are now, it's amazing that the teachers have put in such hard work to get to where they are now. So much new learning for everyone. However, the icing on the cake is when our students debate things like where they hear the schwa, or that's not that syllable type, it's this syllable type. So their knowledge is equally astounding. The No Nonsense Phonics program that we chose, that was the best fit for our schools. It was the best fit because it was suitable for foundation to Year 6 and beyond. It encourages explicit SSP within a rich literature and language curriculum. We were really lucky to get a lot of support from Debbie Heppel-White, the author, and she's very giving of her time and expertise. It emphasises cumulative code with daily review, includes explicit handwriting instruction and practice, provides for decoding, practice and instruction, and encoding, practice and instruction, and it focuses on automaticity, early independence and mastery, and includes mini stories where the students can learn comprehension skills as well as extending themselves in the text. The professional learning has been a huge component and to where we are now. It's ongoing, there's been lots of it and there's still lots more to come. We provided professional learning at team levels, at whole staff levels, and through our combined school closure days. It's been paramount in improving our teacher confidence. We continue to provide PL based on our feedback from teachers, and we do go backwards and forwards as required and when required. Emma, Bree and myself are embedded in current research and have been afforded the opportunity to complete external professional learning to support us in our roles as well. Step 4, we developed our structured literacy curriculum and we drew on a wide range of credible resources to do this. So the Victorian curriculum is an obvious one. We were reflective of Scarborough's reading rope and the simple view of reading. We looked at a whole range of credible resources, and there's a slide coming up shortly which will give you a snapshot of all of those resources. And of course, our curriculum covers the 6 areas or elements of structured literacy, which are on your screen now. This is the slide I was talking about. These are the key documents that we use to inform our curriculum, and it's a question we get asked a lot. How did you make it up? Well, we didn't make it up. We consulted lots of different resources along the way, and we still do to this point. We've been very deliberate in the resources we consulted with and acknowledging that not all research is created equally. I suppose in short, we needed to ensure that our decisions were not made from a position of bias or within a context of political and special expertise. This is our 2022 scheduled assessments. This is the first year where we have implemented our assessments. We designed a suite of assessments for F to 6, covering the 6 elements of structured literacy. And they're very specific for each of the year levels, as you will see there. This is a sample assessment. This is our Year 3 syllable assessment. What's common on all of our assessments is that the outcomes that are being assessed are always at the top. There's a content, so what you'll find in the assessment, how to administer the assessment, the marking guide, and the benchmark, which is always at 80%. And in the right-hand side of the screen is the actual assessment itself. We are currently reviewing our suite of assessments. They have been trialled and they are loved by our teachers and very well received. We were very nervous when we first put them out there because there is a lot and it's asking a lot of an already very busy teacher to implement this new suite of assessments. They love them because of the data they get. However, we believe that the current schedule is overly rigorous and is not sustainable moving into the future. So we're currently looking at alternate options such as DIBBLs, and when I mean currently, it's like right now on our to-do list.
And I'll just add in there, this has been one of the reasons it's been so invaluable for me to actually step back into the classroom this year and be one of the teachers administering the assessments amongst everything else that I was doing, because designing them a year or so ago in this office was one thing, but then actually administering them in real life and real time with real kids is a completely different matter again. And I was able to just say, yeah, we can't keep doing this. It's wonderful and it's great, but we've got to weigh up that cost benefit thing.
It's really interesting to note too, we put this to our staff when we were first recognising that it was overly rigorous, as Rebecca said, and they actually chose to keep them for the time being because they gain such valuable data in terms of guiding instruction moving forward. So we need to find something that provides the same amount of data but is less rigorous in terms of time, I think.
Yeah.
So on this slide, you'll see what our termly planners look like. Each team across both schools are required to complete termly planners for structured literacy with the elements, the 6 elements down the left-hand side, and then filling in the details across the weeks of the term. These planners are non-negotiable in the sense that they must be completed by teams, and one of my big roles is supporting teams to complete these. It just goes over 2 slides here. And obviously this information then translates into our weekly planners for our teachers. So it's quite fluid, if you like. Once this termly planner is completed, the weekly planners become quite simple, if I could use that word, that we're not having to create new information for our weekly planners.
And all of that information comes straight from our structured literacy curriculum, which you'll see very soon.
So what are the features of our 2-hour literacy block? Well, there's no more reading block and writing block. It's all combined. And it begins with a daily review. Once again, this is non-negotiable and happens across all of our classrooms. It's 15 minutes of no new learning, and we are just reviewing previously taught content that is decided by the teams. It's fast-paced and it's deliberately fast-paced. And as Anita Archer says, everybody does everything at this point in the day. The kids then move into what we call the building blocks, and that's about a 45-minute period of time. And here the students are explicitly taught phonology and phonics, handwriting, paired fluency, spelling, and word or sentence instructions such as syllables, morphology, etymology, depending on your year level. We then, everyone, and I mean everyone, has a 10-minute movement break, because it is needed. This is an exhausting period of time in their day, and they need to get up, move around, and have a brain food break. So everyone does that for about 10 minutes. Then we come back in and we get ready for what we've called pulling it all together, where the students are guided through a text study, a focus text, which is linked to the curriculum content. And for those of you who are familiar with the writing revolution, the connection there is quite obvious. The students are also exposed to vocab, idioms, comprehension is a big part of this one. Our students are taught how to note take and summarise, and then applying the writing revolution strategies, the students get an opportunity to do some writing at different levels. Then it all culminates with a read to, where a class novel or picture book is read, and this is for pure enjoyment only.
I'll just add in here, we mentioned earlier that we used to notice not just reading intervention needs, but behaviour intervention needs. Since implementing this 2-hour literacy block, the rate of misbehaviour or interruptions in this 2 hours is almost 0, and we've had quite a few visitors come to observe in our classrooms, especially over the last term or so, and it's always one of their first comments is that there is just no behaviour issues, no disengagement, and it's purely because there isn't time. Like, our feet do not hit the ground in this 2 hours. It is full on, and we get to playtime, and just we are worn out, but it's as it should be, and it's working.
Yep, absolutely. The next few slides are examples of, this one is of daily review slides, which I've just spoken about. So here you can see the kids could be exposed to saying the sounds, they could be exposed to vowels versus consonants, We're practicing writing sentences. Is it a sentence fragment or run-on? Practicing our syllable skills, or practicing tap it, map it, graphic skills in recording and hearing and recording sounds. And on the
Sorry,
Go
Bec,
ahead, go
a
ahead.
teacher said to me very early on in the piece, she was reflecting on it, and she said, I've just realised my kids are learning more in daily review than I used to teach in a whole literacy block.
And this is very much, and we use the comment, the teacher is the sage on the stage. So it's, if I can click my fingers, it's very quick, it's very fast paced. The teacher has full control at this part of the day, and the students really participation. Yes, they're participating at the, under the expertise banner of the teacher here. So this is a slide which shows the instructional part of our day. The top left-hand slide or picture is a paired fluency slide, and we've got a building blocks, which is about our handwriting. Bottom right is a sample of students completing because, but, so, and that's the writing revolution strategy. And down the bottom left, there's a sample of an idiom. So it's all explicitly taught. There's nothing we leave to chance. Here, and I'm really serious with this slide because we sort of looked at it before and had a bit of a giggle, but it's not funny at all, really. In 2019, about this time of year, we had a crisis meeting at one of our schools because the blank lines is what we were seeing on a daily basis from the majority of our foundation students. Couldn't write. Wouldn't, they just couldn't write. And we were tearing our hair out. We didn't know what to do. And on the right-hand side, you'll see this is a sample from grade 5 earlier this year. And you can see lack of punctuation, run-on sentences. It doesn't make any sense at all. And it's because they haven't been exposed to explicit instruction in how to construct sentences. This is 2019, grade 5 writing samples, very similar challenges here, spelling, punctuation, writing how they speak, just no sense to their stories whatsoever. However,
More a case of assigning writing instead of teaching writing.
Very much so. However, this is today, and this is just last week on the left-hand side here. This is foundation student samples, independently writing. What stands out to us is not only the fact they've got sentences on their page or words on their page, correct spelling, plausible attempts, capital letters, full stops, the use of the conjunction because, and the list goes on. And remembering this isn't even a full year of learning under the youngest students at our school. Like it blows my mind away every time I walk into the foundation rooms. They are simply amazing, these kids. These are examples here on the left-hand side of our grade 2 students just recently showing their mastery of the because but so sense level writing strategy. And on the right-hand side, our grade 4 students showing their expertise in using appositives in their writing. So the skill level of our students has increased dramatically. These are some of our grade 5-6 students. On the left-hand side, you will see our students are now writing about the purpose of different components of our writing, like topic sentences, for example, and using the because, but, so strategy to show their understanding of why it's important they know how to write a topic sentence. On the right-hand side, you'll see a student who's writing about Afghanistan, learning about the Morosco Arts and Book Boy Overboard and refugees. So that is the content that's driven this writing here. It's progress. We know there's a lot of work to go across our grades, but it's amazing progress. And now I'd like to hand over to Breeana.
Oh, well, thank you, Bec.
Yo.
And it is really exciting walking through, particularly those prep rooms, knowing that they're our benchmark year, I guess, for the instruction and the difference that it's making. We thought it was really important to note that another one of the greatest learning curves for us existed in the importance of a knowledge-rich and low-variance curriculum. The idea of content driving the rigour of instruction was heavily enforced through the adoption of TWR, and our research led us to really understand the role of background knowledge in reading comprehension. And from a leadership perspective, I often reflect on this particular change to our practice and our priorities. I know that when I first arrived at St Joseph's in 2018 as DP, our discussions are always centred around things like the kids are struggling with literacy, how do we get more literacy instruction into them? And at the time, I understood that we simply needed to increase the hours spent on literacy instruction, sometimes at the cost of the other areas, and that it'd all just fall into place for them. But I think that now, thanks to experts such as Natalie Wexler and E.D. Hirsch, and even an article written by Ballarat's own Reed Smith, the importance of knowledge and vast vocabulary exposure in reading comprehension is abundantly clear to us, and I think it's evident in our classrooms. A significant focus has been on creating a vertically aligned knowledge-rich curriculum. At present, this is driven by Inquisitive at St Joseph's and Mappin at St Paul's, and the Awakenings curriculum, our RE curriculum at both of our schools. And I guess in the same way that Core Knowledge provides clear content for many other schools heading down the same structure as us for structural literacy, it's really aligning with the science of reading pedagogy, which is great. Now in our classrooms, our students read and write to learn about content. If they're learning about forces and energy in science, for example, then they're reading and writing about that in literacy. I think these were really important parts for us to put up. As Natalie Wexler demonstrates in the second paragraph there, cognitive science has shown that the primary factor in whether you're able to understand what you read is whether you possess the relevant background knowledge and vocabulary. So we're trying to intentionally build a wide, deep and flourishing field of knowledge for our students. I really love what Hockman refers to in the first snippet about the reciprocal skill of writing as well. She references the fact that writing can take many forms, but that ultimately most writing serves two primary functions. So it's either knowledge telling or knowledge transforming. But our instruction as primary teachers is often dominated by creative writing rather than communication. This is what we've tried to transform so that the assigning of writing such as imaginative stories and poems and journal entries and the like aren't departing from direct instruction on how to write. If you haven't had the opportunity to read or engage with either of these texts, they're great time investments, and they really highlight the importance of content knowledge in driving literacy instruction. Step 7 was a biggie for me, particularly in terms of technology. In our transition was the practicalities of streamlining access to vital content for our teachers across 2 schools. The last thing we wanted was for busy teachers on a steep learning curve to be searching for our curriculum or our assessments, planning docs and the like, or trawling through documents to find that one that they needed. So we made a website. The most frequently used content is on the first line there, and we'll just give you a brief rundown of what those look like in the subsequent slides. Our curriculum content is the most integral document of the entire suite, given that it outlines what needs to be taught and when. So we wanted it to be as easy to navigate as possible. We laid it out in what looks like a website, a really basic one, with access to all grades at the top. We were really strong on the fact that we wanted composite grade content alongside one another to prevent any backwards and forwards navigation for our teachers. So if you're teaching a grade 1-2, in a minute it'll come up there, you'll see both grades alongside one another, and you can just easily navigate between the two instead of going backwards and forwards. What you're seeing now on the screen is just a quick walkthrough of our curriculum, and you'll see the 1-2 next to each other there, so you can compare what needs to be taught and when. Our planning documents are easily accessible too, and these are accessed via a central spot every week. When the teachers click on them, a copy is made when they click the template, so that any changes to those planners and outlines are available immediately to our teachers. We wanted to prevent the emailing and sharing new templates as required, because that can often create some confusion. So we have optional planners and sample planners available for our staff too, and you'll see a little bit of that coming up now. We'll move on. The decisions that we make about our instruction are always informed by data, and this is one piece of the puzzle that we really needed to get right. We're constantly reviewing all aspects of our assessment and data analysis, as Rebecca spoke about before, but what you'll see on the screen now are just 3 tiny snippets of what data collection can look like for us. We've removed names and identifiable information here, but hopefully you'll see 3 different pieces of data collection. You'll see that the points of collection vary depending on the assessment. So some just have a score, primarily if the assessment is used for longitudinal tracking of growth or if it's a standardised assessment. but some have the items or skills being assessed included on the tracking, like the one you can see in the middle, so that we can make decisions around where instruction should be prioritised. Regardless of what type of collection is used for the assessment, there are some common features between the tracking types. Each one demonstrates growth between the testing periods, and we've really found that the advantage of using these assessments across both schools on the same schedule is being able to collect the results from all students taking each assessment to establish a mean as a reference point for student achievement, particularly when those assessments are so new. Once that mean or the average is established, we're then able to judge student achievement in terms of how far away from that mean each student is. Collecting this data allows us to track student success, plan for core teaching, identify students for tier 2 and 3 intervention, and when we think about big picture terms, it allows us to track the success of our project. There are many more layers to this data tool, but that's a story for another day. If there is anyone interested though in knowing more about how and why we use deviation scores and standard deviations and Z scores, which you'll see on the screen there, and how we plan to determine effect sizes for our SunLit methodology moving forward, then feel free to give me a buzz. I'm happy to chat about that anytime, which may make me a data nerd.
She is.
The last step in our implementation was articulating and building ownership of collective commitments. Peter Drucker famously said that culture eats strategy for breakfast, and we knew that no matter how sound our strategy was, without our teams being willing to row the boat in the same direction, we wouldn't have reached the point of implementation. So culture was key for us. So we've relied on and referenced these collective commitments countless times over the past 3 years. The first one there, trust the research, the leaders, and the implementation plan. Work collaboratively across teams, and we're lucky both of our schools are professional learning community schools, and we think they've worked particularly hard on that over the past couple of years. Make research and evidence-based decisions, so everything we do is with that lens. Collaboratively review and refine practices. Positively engage in and follow through with related professional learning, and I think we're very lucky to have 2 of the most incredible staff teams when it comes to this. Support one another in implementing structured literacy with fidelity and seek support when required. Communicate openly and respectfully, and deliver structured literacy with optimism and a desire to succeed. So they're what's driven us along the way. If you're considering a shift in your context, I guess there are a couple of key insights that we think are important to share. They won't all be applicable in your context, I don't imagine, but some of them might provide points of inspiration for you when you're making a shift. So building a case for change and gaining majority buy-in before we began that change process was integral. Leadership support and total commitment in the implementation plan is crucial. Can't emphasize that one enough. It's very difficult to manage this change alone, and connection is key. I think the 3 of us have said on numerous occasions over the last few years that we wouldn't have been able to manage this had we been approaching the same task solo in our own schools. You need to be ready for a very uncomfortable transition period in which you still have balanced literacy strategies in place while you're introducing structured literacy. And I think Emma referenced this before. It's messy and it's contradictory, but it's really necessary. And I think, and remember and remind each other that it's temporary, and having a transparent timeline is particularly important too. A few more insights to round it out. Including learning support officers, CRTs where possible. We're lucky because a lot of our part-timers become our CRTs, so they're involved in our professional learning. Specialists and tutors in professional learning is integral. Listen to the teachers and balance the need to implement the plan with fidelity with a willingness to listen, review, and even pause when necessary. I think we had a term of no new learning just recently because teachers were up to their eyeballs in new learning and couldn't take any more. So pause when necessary.
And it's been interesting to note when those pauses have happened, because you would think that one of those pause points would obviously have been the pandemic, but it wasn't. That actually wasn't a pause point at all. And we got some really good initial data that was very motivating during that time with the introduction of the phonics program, because we administered the Year 1 phonics check to all the students, Prep to 6, at the beginning of the pandemic and at the end, once we had, had a few units of phonics teaching, and saw a phenomenal improvement in their knowledge and understanding of the alphabetic code. So even the pandemic wasn't a pause point for us, but the teachers saying, that'll do for a minute, that was a pause point. Yeah.
Balancing high expectations with high support is absolutely paramount to the success of this. We needed to have commensurate support for the expectations that we were putting on our teachers and ourselves and our students. Too much or not enough of either will derail the entire process. Remember that the sciences of reading and learning continue to evolve. So while it's established science, it's also evolving science. Don't ever settle or believe that you finished, and keep learning. And that's part of the joy, I think, of our roles in particular. Leaders need to be in the arena. So learning, failing and experimenting alongside their teammates and experiencing that change firsthand, it makes a world of difference. And I think that's part of you going back into the classroom too, has really highlighted how important that has been.
Yeah, that's certainly, I would definitely say that has been the biggest part of my learning in 4 or 5 years now of being completely immersed in reading research. Actually stepping back into the classroom and putting it all into practice has been the key learning for me by a mile. So
what's next for our schools? So in 2023, many schools across the Ballarat Diocese will join the SunLit Project. Sorry, I've just got something happening on my computer. St Paul's and St Joseph's will serve as models of practice for other schools in the Ballarat Diocese, which is really exciting. We acknowledge, though, that we've still got much to learn and much to refine in our own structured literacy journey as well. We'll continue to track and evaluate achievement data, and Bec will continue to lead our 2 level 0 original SunLit schools in their literacy spaces, which is wonderful for our schools. In terms of what's next for the project, with Catholic education recognising that schools want and need support in transitioning to structured literacy or science of reading aligned processes and practices, more schools will join the project, as we said just previously. After being awarded by JobSell for work done on this project, we're really hoping to offer 4 levels of support for transition for other schools in the diocese, which is really exciting. For any JobSell schools that are attending this webinar, a separate webinar is going to be held next Thursday that will outline the particulars of that support that's able to be achieved. In finishing tonight, we thought that the words of Louisa Moats, who I'm sure you're all very familiar with, would be more articulate and on point than anything that we could have devised. So we'll end with this. This we know. Reading failure can be prevented in all but a small percentage of children with serious learning disorders. It is possible to teach most students how to read if we start early and follow the significant body of research showing which practices are most effective. Teaching reading is rocket science, but it's also established science with clear, specific, practical instructional strategies that all teachers should be taught and supported in using. If you like, at some stage, some of you already have, which is lovely to have you all join our little community. Please do head on over to our Facebook page and give us a follow. We're planning to open up access to many of our resources in the coming weeks, and those will be available via that Facebook page. For those who'd like a copy of the slide deck, there's a little bit.ly link down the bottom of the screen there. We thank you so much for inviting us to share our story with you all. It's been a real pleasure to speak in front of such a united community of transformative and innovative teachers and leaders, and we wish you all continued success and resilience as you work to bring about change. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wow, ladies, what a journey you've been on. We've got a couple of questions put up here in the chat that I might just quickly ask. So the first one was, wanted to know if you could share some slides from older classes. Obviously, you won't have them there, but you might be able to add them into your little bit.ly there.
Is there anything? Sorry, is there anything particularly you'd like to see from older classes?
It was Christine. She might unmute and ask. She's still in there.
I suppose it's just your literacy block. any parts of that really. I suppose that's our biggest struggle. We've got our juniors sort of taking off a little bit, but struggling a bit more with our 5, 6s of where to go and what to do there.
Yep, no worries.
Thank you.
And also, yeah, whether the literacy block is the same across the whole school. So Christine wanted to know that as well. And whether you cover all areas in the building block stage each day or whether you split these over the week.
We split them.
Yeah. We have very similar. The building block section is quite structured and quite similar. And it varies more across the school than it does across the week. So our junior, well, actually, because we're backfilling a lot of our middle and senior grades, we've had the phonics program running throughout the school to begin with. We're hoping to get to a stage where the phonics program is done and dusted by grade 2 or grade 3. We're not there yet though. But it's pretty much that sort of word level work, letter level work, handwriting, punctuation, grammar, all the that's why it's called building blocks. It's all the building blocks that we do. So that tends not to vary very much. But then in the second section, the pulling it all together section, that's where we have the same focus text, usually over longer than a week. It's usually over a couple of weeks, where we really unpack that text and use it to take notes to begin with. We might use it to bolster our punctuation instruction by finding contractions, for example. And then it tends to then inform our writing revolution strategies. So it sort of, builds on, but we'll be sharing a lot of this in the next couple of weeks on our Facebook page. And the other thing as well is, if you do have any specific things you'd like us to share, shoot us an email at, what are we, SunLit dot
The SunLit Project at gmail.com.
Yeah. Or just on Messenger through Facebook might be easier.
It's probably easier.
I was just going to say too that the teachers use the curriculum too to deliver within the weekly planner. So for example, our junior students aren't exposed to morphology because it's not part of the curriculum. So that drives what our students are exposed to and explicitly taught.
Our data does as well.
Yep.
So, we've got a particular grade 4 cohort, I think, across one of our schools that doesn't need instruction in one particular thing. So they're focusing in those building blocks section on completely different things. So.
Does that answer that question?
Yes, very good. Somebody else wanted to know if there was any Southern Zone schools joining you. Are you allowed to say?
Yeah, on the list.
We think so. We hope so.
If we aren't allowed to say, can you delete this part of the recording and then before you send it out? There are a list of Southern Zone schools on the attendance sheet for the webinar next week. So we're very hopeful. I know that there is a lot of great work being done down there at the moment in terms of investigating the science of reading. So we are very hopeful that
it will be the offerings of the different levels of support. So very briefly, because this will only really apply to the diocesan schools, there'll be level 1, which is joining the project, being a SunLit school with ours. Level 2, which is for schools that are on their own science of reading, structured literacy journey, and just would like our support and input. And level 3, which is schools that are just beginning to investigate and want to spend a year sort of just learning a bit more before making a decision about what they're going to do. And that will be offered across the diocese, all our schools, and it'll be an opt-in model. That's all we can say at the moment, I think.
Yeah, if you are somebody who is from a diocesan school on this webinar and you didn't know that was happening, just head on over to your newsletter and the link to register for that webinar will be there.
Excellent. So Erin's popped on here. So no reading rotations, big book focus, OLSAL and vocab charts.
No, not as we knew it. We still do have a focus text, which may come in the form of a big book, although we usually now like the kids to all have a copy of the text themselves so they can do highlighting and note-taking. Lots of our OLSAL strategies have informed our work. We still have a lot of vocab work. We still do a lot of synonym and antonym exploration and that kind of thing, but no. one of the great advantages of our OLSEL training that we've had is that in our PL that we've delivered, we haven't had to do a whole lot on phonological awareness and things, because many of our teachers were already trained in a lot of that. So, you know, a lot of that really good stuff is still informing our practice.
If we had to spend a little bit longer on the curriculum and we had have shown you parts of that in more detail, you would see that there is explicit teaching of many of those oral language strategies that we probably weren't teaching as explicitly as we needed to previously. And there's vocabulary, scope and sequence across the school, etc. So there's still a very big focus. And actually we'll share a graphic on the SunLit page about how oral language is throughout our...
Yeah, we can do that really quickly.
Yeah.
And the other thing, I suppose, is I would say it's even more rigorous now, our vocab, that nothing's left to chance. We're not picking our focus words every week. We know our words. I can tell you what my words are going to be in my classroom in 4 weeks' time, as well as the other words that will come from the focus text. But I can also tell you that this week they'll be learning this one and this one and this one, because
non-negotiable vocab.
We've got, non-negotiable vocab words.
Seems really well planned, girls. You're doing a super job. Just your link down the bottom for the slides. I wonder if we could just pop a copy of that into the chat so that people could click on that link, because I don't think they can click on the...
Yeah, of course.
On the actual presentation, and you're so tech savvy. I know you'll be able to click that. Does anyone else have any questions? Would they like to unmute and ask the girls anything? Someone daring? Perhaps I'll ask a non-volunteer. No, I wouldn't do that.
I've just got a comment, Shay, and that is that I follow along on Facebook and have been closely following along for a while now, and it's so inspiring seeing the things that you've put up on social media, and it just shows actually how considered everything is that you do. So you're just so generous in everything that you're sharing, and in particular I was really inspired when you put your road map up and shared that with everybody, because I think sometimes when we're so stuck in the work, we can forget to actually take stock of where we've come from and what our next steps are. So that was something that I took from your Facebook page, and I'd encourage anyone who's not following along on Facebook to start following the SunLit Project on Facebook, because it's a wealth of information and really inspiring. So thank you for your generosity and everything that you're doing as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely, Kate. I've been taking notes as you've been speaking, and I just think the comments about the decrease in behaviour issues with your explicit teaching is something that we can all take away. I think your website is wonderful, and someone has just popped up, you know, is there any plans for a website where the resources and other information can be accessed?
There is, yes.
It's underway.
That's definitely coming.
Yeah.
I guess we're just at the moment, while we're still rolling out options for the diocese next year, until we've sort of had given the courtesy, I suppose, of starting off it with our own schools and our own system. Once that's underway, then there'll be a lot of things we'll be sharing more widely and more publicly as well. But that will be happening very soon.
Wonderful, thank you. And I was not aware that you could do the Year 1 phonics check with every student, so that's what I'll be doing soon too.
It's very scary.
I've done it before, but I didn't realise you could do it. Yeah, it'd be good data.
I guess you can't use the norm
No.
for anything other than
It gives you a picture.
It just gives you your pre and post. And we did hear, many of you would have heard the whisper too, that it's going to be mandated next year.
Yes.
Hopefully, we think.
Yep, I know it is. It's been publicised, I believe.
Oh, it has today. Oh, good.
Wonderful.
And there's the link. Thank you. Let me just have a look what else I wrote down. And I think, just that the focus on the data, and that, you know, people who are wanting to change from balanced to structured literacy. Greg Clement said it, you can't hide from bad data. So if we all use our data, we can all make the change. But if anyone else doesn't, if nobody else has questions, we'd just like to really thank you girls for coming along and sharing your journey today, because it just helps all of us so much, especially when you're the only person in your school and you're looking to change, but you don't know how. So thank you for sharing your journey with us tonight. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for the invitation. It's been lovely.
Thanks.
I'm sure we'll have you back at some stage. And thank